Have you ever stopped and truly considered what it would be like to have a relationship with God? Perhaps you think you already do, but in order to even begin to understand what it would really be like, you have to consider the extremes of existence. That's very difficult to do without an analogy with which to relate, so please allow me to paint a picture for you. Consider the history of the Earth. Let's say you work 8 hours a day. If 1 minute represents 10 million years, then human beings didn't show up to your job until about 7.5 hours into your 8-hour shift. And we've currently been there for only 1.2 seconds. All of our civilizations have been there for only 0.03 seconds. Now, you don't know it, but I already represented that in this video with a single frame. Because this video is 30 frames a second, one frame would represent all of our civilizations throughout history. The reason you didn't know it is because it happened too fast for you to see. We are less than the blink of an eye. This is what the frame looked like, and it occurred at precisely 10 seconds into this video, frame number 300. Now imagine that this video is 8 hours long, with that one frame representing every human civilization, and you will begin to understand our percentage of Earth's history. Now consider that the known universe itself is a few times older than that, and relatively still a newborn in its life cycle. If you've owned the same car for around 20 years, and if you drove it regularly throughout those 20 years, you might put around 250,000 miles on it. That's only a one-way trip to the moon. Now, the speed of light is extremely slow on a cosmic scale, yet at the speed of light, you could get to the moon in less than 2 seconds. All the distance you've driven that car for 20 years, done in under 2 seconds. Now, that sounds very fast to us, yet to travel across our galaxy at the speed of light, it would take 100,000 years. That's how massive our galaxy is. Pretty big, right? Not so fast. We did a survey of 5% of our sky to see what was out there. This is 3% of that survey data, a fraction of a fraction. Every dot you see in this image is a galaxy. You're looking at about 50,000 of them. And our galaxy is like a speck of dust among clusters just like this. If our entire galaxy vanished, the universe would not notice. In fact, I already did that right in front of your eyes. After this image had been on the screen for 5 seconds or 150 frames, I deleted one of the galaxies. That one right there. Did you notice? And this is only 3% of the 5% of what we are able to see. There's trillions of galaxies. If the universe stopped expanding right now, it would take 46 billion years to travel across it at light speed, the same speed that gets us to the moon in less than 2 seconds. But because the universe is rapidly expanding, you could never travel across it at light speed. Light speed is far too slow, and the universe, as incomprehensibly massive as it is, will never be smaller than it is right now. It will just keep growing, and it has trillions of years to go. From one extreme to the other, you are like a universe in and of yourself. If you absent-mindedly scratch your arm, skin cells will flake off without you even realizing it. A skin cell has 100 trillion atoms. So when you absent-mindedly scratch your arm, at an atomic scale, it's like you're causing huge cities to come raining down. And when I said you're a universe, I meant it figuratively and literally. You are many different ecosystems. Did you know that only about 30 to 50% of the cells in your body are human? The rest are microscopic organisms like bacteria, fungi, and viruses. There's about 2 million genes in your body right now, but only about 20,000 of them are human. These are the extreme times, sizes, and differences that are difficult for us to comprehend. Our universe looks and behaves very differently when we zoom way in and when we zoom way out. We exist within a tiny margin of the universe where we were born and raised, so it's what we know, and it's therefore difficult to imagine the extremes beyond our sliver of time and space. We can only perceive a tiny portion of reality. One reason for that is we don't really need to be able to comprehend the extremes. Human beings got along just fine before we had any idea about the size of the universe or of the quantum scale. Our brains never evolved as the result of a necessity to comprehend such things. The need was never there, so it's difficult for us. We're not really equipped for such comprehension. When the numbers get large enough, they become abstract to us, and we fail to appreciate them for what they are. So, what I want you to do now is think about an extreme that's a little more comprehensible. You probably think human beings are a successful species. Why wouldn't you? We cover the earth. There are 8 billion of us. But there is a species on Earth that, like humans, overcame much stronger opponents by working together. And through cooperation, they also eventually ended up becoming a dominant species, covering the Earth with a population of 20 quadrillion. That's 2.5 million for every human being. Many other species rely upon them and would go extinct without them. What are they? Ants. Think about the extreme difference between you and an ant. Your day-to-day motives and perceptions are so different that you probably rarely think about ants. You've likely killed countless ants without even realizing it just through the mere act of walking. You know what they are. You know what they do. Any ants before you at any given moment are completely at your mercy. You could spray them away with a hose, poison them, or give them resources and let them flourish. Whatever you want to know about ants, you could easily look up and learn if you wanted to. You could learn everything there is to know about them, but if you didn't want to, it wouldn't affect your life. You could live the rest of your days without needing to know anything more about ants. Now, think about the inverse. You are a complete and total enigma to ants. You are a force of nature to them. Do you think you could get an ant to comprehend how the amortization of your mortgage affects percentage paid toward principal versus interest over time? Could you explain to an ant the concept of a suspect's alibi in a police detective thriller that you read? Can an ant understand what a black hole is? Of course not. They don't have the hardware capable of comprehending any of that. It's not even like trying to get the latest AAA video game to run on a vacuum tube computer built in the 1940s, which would be impossible. It would be like trying to get the latest AAA video game to run on an abacus. It doesn't even make sense. As vast as the difference between you and an ant seems, the difference between you and an ant would be hardly noticeable at all, microscopic compared to the difference between you and a being that knows everything. I want you to think about what it would take for you to have a meaningful, loving, mutually stimulating relationship with an ant. A relationship so significant that you'd be willing to sacrifice your life for that ant. A relationship in which that ant knows enough about you to appreciate you, love you, and understand you. We can all agree that such a relationship is impossible. The differences are too great. The incompatibilities are insurmountable, both for you and for the ant. The ant could never give you a relationship that would be significantly meaningful to you, and you could never be comprehensible enough to the ant for the relationship to have any sort of meaning to it. There could be no meaningful reciprocation. If we represent the difference between you and that ant as being on opposite banks of a river, then the difference between you and a being that comprehends everything could not even be represented by opposite ends of the ocean. It would have to be represented by being on completely different planets in completely different solar systems. So for people to even think that they can have a relationship with an omniscient being, they need to belong to a species incapable of comprehending such extremes, because it's such a wildly unrealistic proposition. Even my analogy of a human and an ant having a mutually meaningful relationship is woefully inadequate of a comparison. You would have absolutely nothing to offer a being as vastly intelligent as God would have to be to know and to comprehend everything that ever was and will be. We have difficulty coping with our limitations or even acknowledging them, so we think it's possible, or we don't even think about it at all. We just take it for granted, like the couch potato who thinks he can beat up a professional MMA fighter. They don't know what they don't know. You see, all it takes is a little bit of knowledge to appreciate what you don't know. Ironic, isn't it? It takes knowledge to know when you're ignorant. But some of us don't even take the time and effort to gain that little bit of knowledge, so they can then delude themselves into believing all sorts of nonsense and then mistake themselves as peers to those who have trained and studied for their entire lives. If the couch potato took a few MMA classes and had a few sparring matches, they might be able to understand how much training a professional fighter goes through, what it actually takes to be that proficient. Then their thoughts would become more realistic, and they would be more aware of their own limitations. Humility immediately follows. It's not just about our physical ability either. The same holds true of intellectual and even emotional pursuits and interactions. Perhaps another reason we lack this humility is because we exist at the current end of history, the present. So we have trouble not imagining ourselves as the end goal of history. There is every indication, however, that we are just another step in the timeline that will continue onward long after we are gone and forgotten. A great deal of our ancestors very mistakenly thought that they were the last generation, and even today there are many who believe the same about themselves. It's difficult for us to imagine becoming just another part of the historical record. Another part that few people will care about, because to us, currently, we matter more than anything. We tend to place higher importance on the last of things, but the truth is, there is no reason to believe that the last generations will be more or less important than the first, or any in between. We human beings anthropomorphized the universe. We seek patterns and agency even where there aren't any. That has helped us evolutionarily. It's safer to believe that a bush rattled because of a leopard than because of the wind. Thus, we are hardwired to believe things that are not true. Seeing such agency in nature helped give rise to our belief in gods. And because we're so self-centered, we imagined that the universe is just for us, and that our fraction of a second alive means that billions of years went by just for us, waiting for us. Because people fail to comprehend the extremes, they end up believing that the pinnacle of all things personally advises them on whether to go on a second date with Jeff, or whether they should quit their job at Walmart, or even where to find their car keys. Only a very limited imagination could fall for such a thing, because it would have to believe that we human beings are close to the pinnacle of knowledge and intellect, at least close enough to be able to have a relationship with the pinnacle itself. That is hubris on a level of absolute absurdity. The pinnacle of knowledge and intellect cannot have a meaningful relationship with you any more than you can have a meaningful relationship with an ant. And you cannot comprehend the pinnacle of knowledge and intellect any more than an ant can comprehend you. Even if you were standing right in front of it, you'd have no idea what you're looking at. Perhaps most importantly, the pinnacle of all things, by its very nature, could not have aspirations, and thus would want nothing and need nothing, including you. Realistically, you would never be in a position to choose a relationship with it, because it would have nothing to do with you. The answer to this possible disappointment is to turn to your fellow human beings, those people with whom you can have a meaningful relationship, those people who need your help and can not only comprehend you, but appreciate you and truly love you. They are the people of the here and of the now. Treasure them during their brief moment that makes them rare and precious. If we ever decide or discover that the universe itself is God, then it's not the pinnacle, but the collective. That means a relationship is not only possible, but that you're already in one right now. That means you get to determine what that relationship is based on how you treat others, which isn't all that different from what the various religions tried to teach us anyway. So behave accordingly. Abandon the construct of your ego and turn instead to what we know is real. You don't need the cartoonish character who knows it all. If it's not real, it's beneath you. And if it is real, it's beyond you. Either way, you won't be involved. So it's a waste of your limited time to worry about it. Real or not, such a being would neither need you nor want you. But there are those who do. We need you. We want you. We actually can have aspirations because we are not the greatest. So we can always be greater. And we need you to help us get there.